Welcome to my DMT Laser Experiment video, part 2. I'm making this video to respond to some comments and questions on my previous video about this experiment, to add some new data points from a new session that I've previously done, and to add some original drawings as well as share some pictures and photographs. I guess I'd like to start this video by saying that a lot of the comments and questions that I got could be answered or clarified by just going to Danny's websites and looking at the content that he already has. I'm not associated with Danny Goler really in any way. I will say, in all honesty, I'm friends with Danny. I consider him a valuable voice in the DMT space. Him and his family are part of my prayers at night. I send him love all the time. That being said, I have no other incentive other than just sharing my experiences with the genuine desire to add data to this conversation and to run it through my raw and authentic filter. I mentioned that I have no affiliation necessarily with him because I wanted to make sure that people don't think I'm promoting any of his work. Danny's website and social media content is readily accessible, and my personal experience and from what I've heard of others is that he really is open to conversation. He's open to a dialogue. He is looking for more data points, and if you have intelligent and valid questions or comments, he's definitely willing to entertain listening. So again, for a lot of the questions about what type of laser do you use, how do you get the laser, as well as how he describes the symbols, that there is actually some information out there about what people are seeing. I'm making this video because I did do a session recently with DMT, and I did do the laser experiment. With this time, it was with the explicit intent to try to look more at the symbols, to try to find more information that I could bring back from looking at the code, and ideally make some drawings and make some original drawings, which I did do and I will share in this video. To reiterate some of the points that I made in the first video, I do want to stress again that DMT really needs to be put at the forefront of this experiment. Make sure you do give it the respect and reverence that it deserves and needs. I wouldn't necessarily have this be the first time you do DMT when you're trying to look at the laser, because it is something that, in my opinion, you do need to become comfortable with in order to really kind of sit down and be comfortable looking for the code. That being said, the first time that I did try to see it, which I did mention in that first video, it did come out with some practice, and I did give some kind of tips, but I did want to add on to that because I felt as though this last session, some things really did come through. So in addition to, once again, making sure that you have the right setting and the right environment to actually do DMT in, and that you are comfortable, and that if you do honestly take too much, that you have a place to kind of lay down and relax and just let it pass, because that did happen to me the first time where I took a huge blast and honestly it was too much. I needed to just kind of chill out for a bit. So, and that actually is one of the questions that I've got. How much of a blast you really need to take? Is it more kind of like just a smaller microdose where you're elevating your states of consciousness, or you're going through for a full kind of breakthrough dose where you're really blasting off? I would say it's closer to the microdosing, kind of just elevating yourself. You really, it would be tough to stay coherent if you were fully blasted off. So that's part of doing this experiment too, is to kind of practice and learn where you need to throttle it back and forth. But yeah, the idea isn't to get fully out there, simply to get elevated and have your sensitivity increased. So once the environment's set up, and you have the intention and you're kind of ready to go, you really want to make sure there's some basic safety stuff. So you're not looking directly in the laser. So that's where I mentioned that, and every time I've done it, I've worn a hoodie. So that way it can kind of act as a visor or a shield. Not only is it comfortable to have that protection, and it kind of forces you to have almost like blind design when you're covering it, but as the laser's coming in at an angle, you can use that shield from the hoodie to block it and really get as close as you need to the wall or to where the laser is projected without actually having the laser enter your face, and just give you another layer of protection. I also mentioned that last time I found it really helpful to, I guess, first off, follow some of Danny's original recommendations, which was to consider it kind of like the Magic Eye books, where you have to kind of look through the surface to actually see the image, and when you do, it does kind of pop out. Looking out of a window and kind of looking through the window as opposed to the actual pane of glass, I think both of those things are appropriate, and I would follow both of those suggestions. I added last time that I used my eyelashes to filter out some of the light. Excuse me, and I found that really helpful this time as well. So the laser itself, again, you're not looking at the surface. You're really kind of to look through it and kind of in through the layers of the laser. But the bright red laser, in contrast to the dark room, just really is bright. So you have a lot of photons hitting your eyes, and it's just without, for me anyway, without kind of filtering out some of the brightness of that laser, you really couldn't see it as easily because it was just overshadowed by the intensity of the laser. So as you started shutting your eyes and using well, for me anyway, as I started shutting my eyes and using my eyelashes as a filter, and that brightness of the laser started going away, that's when you could actually start, the contrast shifted, and you could start seeing the grid work of the code and the actual symbols starting to come out. So I think a combination of those things, which is the magic eye concept, looking through the window, having something to protect your eye like the hoodie, and then using your eyelids and our eyelashes to kind of throttle the intensity of the laser, so that way you can comfortably look and kind of explore the depths of the laser, without having the fear of burning out your eyes or actually having the laser enter your eyes. So I mentioned in the previous video that, like a lot of people are experiencing, that once you do see the code, it's very distinct and obvious from the other aspects of the laser, or the typical DMT space that you're looking at. I mentioned how last time, for me, it was very distinct columns and pixels, and that there was not only a raining movement, but also a horizontal kind of movement that happened when the symbols connected. So I did make some drawings, and I will share those again, that I used to try to show what I'm trying to explain, what happened as far as the actual grid work. The first set of drawings that I'm about to show you, that's what I drew after my first kind of sessions with the DMT laser, and it was trying to go from memory, and I did use some other resources, and I do actually mention and reference Alison Gray's ancient alphabet that she designed as a creative piece of artwork, and I use that just as an example. So the first set of pictures, I'm using her alphabet as an example of what I saw, and then the last set of pictures that I share are from this last session that I did, where again my explicit intention was to really try to focus in on the symbols and understand, or try to get a better understanding of what they were. I do want to add to this video that when I was talking about the complexity and the layers of how the code appears and how the symbols appear in that code in the last video, I do want to add that it's really difficult, again, to get a snapshot because everything is moving and there is a constant raining down of these symbols. But I want to add that the complexity is increased because it's not just one layer of that code. It seems like it's a almost indefinite layer of codes where, so you have codes imposed on other codes in front of it, and subsequently for almost as long as you can see. So you're not just seeing one set of codes, you're also seeing movement behind it. And in addition to the raining down vertical movement, the horizontal connection of the symbols, this last session that I saw too, it was very possible that the symbols themselves were rotating. Now, I don't know if that was just the symbols moving in connection so fast that as the new symbol appeared, it appeared that it was rotating, but that could also be something too, that the symbols, in addition to actually falling and cascading and connecting to the ones laterally, that they're actually spinning themselves, which again adds to the complexity of trying to draw it, trying to get a snapshot, and what they are. So these first set of drawings that I'm going to share with you were made after the first session that I had. I wanted to try to get on paper and explain not only to myself, to give more data to Danny, as well as to, again, try to just shed some light on this for the people that follow my work. So the first drawing is just a picture of how I had it projected. I was projecting it on an interior post in a dark room in my house, and again, here's a picture of how I shined it against the post, so it wrapped around two sides. In that picture, there's a postcard. I'll read the postcard as well as what's on top of the page. So on top of that page, it states that the laser projected onto an approximately 7-inch by approximately 10-inch interior post laser pointed at the corner of the post to allow for both sides of post to have a roughly 2-inch wide band of laser light. The postcard on the side of that picture states, the visible area that comes into focus that contains the quote-unquote code is a very slim sliver within the roughly 2-inch band of the laser. The code is not projected on the surface of the wall, but rather it is located within the layers beyond the surface. The actual quote-unquote code characters or symbols are very small, appearing almost microscopic. The second drawing that I'm going to share, I mentioned that I'm using Allison Gray's alphabet. And again, I made this drawing after my first session, and this was before I actually was, going in to really try to focus on the symbols themselves. So I used her work as an example of how the alphabet itself was structured. I do want to comment, her symbols are not exactly what I saw, and her symbols I'm not inferring are the DMT code, and I'm not saying that her alphabet has anything to do necessarily with this laser code. What I was trying to imply was that a simple alphabet can be constructed if a set of laws really are used and repeated to have a cohesive set of symbols. And again, that's what I was trying to convey. So on this picture, I made the grid work that I mentioned that I saw, and then I filled them with examples of her actual letters from the alphabet that she drew, and her work is easily referenceable. Her other work is absolutely beautiful as well, so if people aren't familiar with her and her husband's work, highly recommend checking that stuff out. On this picture, there are several postcards. I will read them, and again, feel free to snapshot this, zoom in on them. If anybody wants to have a discussion about the pictures themselves that I drew, I'd be more than happy to talk about them. I'm going to read what each one of those postcards state. The first one, for ease of example, I'm going to use Allison Gray's secret writing symbols to illustrate how the quote-unquote code fills in the boxes/pixels and how the symbols produce the effect of the snake or lightning movement from left to right. I will attempt to make original symbols as I experience more time with the quote-unquote code. The symbols are made up of a combination of smaller, straight, and curved parts. Similar examples are how numbers are formed in digital clocks. The quote-unquote code and the symbols that make up its alphabet are made up of smaller parts in different combinations and omissions. I suggest looking at the work of Allison Gray and her secret writing symbols as a good example of how symbols can be created by using a grid system within a box. Each of her symbols follows specific rules within the grid framework to produce a quote-unquote alphabet that is uniform and consistent in appearance. The quote-unquote code appears to be raining down in distinct columns with distinct and rigid boundaries. There appears to be boxes or pixels within each column that the symbols seem to fall into. The individual boxes or pixels appear to form rows that spread out laterally left and right of the up and down columns. The individual boxes or pixels also appear to be broken up in distinct sections. These sections either remain blank or are filled with a small line or bar or curved mark. The compartmentalized areas of the box or pixel is similar to how the numbers of a digital clock are made. Depending on what symbol lands in each box or pixel and how the symbol matches up with the symbol adjacent to it, if the bars, lines, or curved sections of the symbol quote-unquote matches up with the one next to it, it can create the effect of fast-moving snakes or lightning. The left to right movement can look like a fast-moving stock ticker sign. Because you have to intentionally focus on the code to see the individual symbols, it is impossible to see the outer boundaries or the entire scope of the quote-unquote code. The columns, rows, and boxes/pixels appear to go on indefinitely in all directions. This next drawing that I'm going to share with you is what I made just this past week after the last session that I did. After all the questions and comments that I got on the last video, I really wanted to go in and try to focus specifically on the symbols. That first attempt was to see if I could see something specific that resembled the code. I did, but again, it really wasn't the intent to, or excuse me, not that I didn't have the intent of seeing the symbols, but I didn't have pen and paper ready. My plan wasn't to try to translate what I saw, but I realized that was probably the most pressing question of anything that I got was, can you please try to draw these, or what exactly are we looking at? So this last session, that was my plan, and I came out, and when I drew these symbols, I wasn't looking at Allison Gray's work. I wasn't looking at any of the the Asian symbols that are used. I wasn't looking at the packaging that Danny has on his laser. This really was just, what did you see, and can you try to replicate it? And again, this isn't going to be an exact, I can't guarantee that this is exactly what the symbols are. They move so quick. I mentioned how they seem to be rotating. There's multiple layers of them. But I'm trying to give the general flavor and feel of what these symbols are, which are basic line-based symbols or signs that are contained within a certain gridwork, that are uniform in size, that seem to follow some sort of cohesive set of rules that make them appear to be, part of a code or an alphabet. So these symbols here, again, are my attempt to draw what I saw with nothing but using my memory to produce these symbols. The postcards on the side of this picture state, and I'll read those: these symbols are my attempt to recreate what I saw in the quote-unquote code. They are estimations of the shape, layout, and design of what appears to be raining down within the gridwork, where the symbols are constantly moving and shifting. These original drawings are meant to be viewed with the other descriptions and drawings where I used Alison Gray's secret writing symbols as an example of an alphabet that uses a set of rules and structural guidelines to form a relatively consistent and uniform visual feel. These symbols are constantly moving, raining down, potentially rotating, and interacting with the symbols directly next to each other. It is difficult, if not impossible, to get a quote-unquote snapshot and static image of these symbols. There appears to be multiple layers of the quote-unquote code as well, adding to the complexity and move. So again, this was my attempt to add to the data points, and hopefully, if enough of us do this, maybe we can actually come up with something that resembles what this actual alphabet looks like. So now that I've shared those drawings and tried to describe again what this alphabet and code or symbols actually look like, I want to stress again what I stated in the previous video, as well as what I think Danny is mirroring, which of all of the things and all of the aspects of this code, what those symbols actually look like, what those symbols actually look like, to me anyway, is really not that important. And yeah, is it interesting? Would myself and everybody like to say, yes, this is exactly what we're seeing? But that being said, every interpretation of what those symbols mean is going to be run through a subjective opinion, whether it be my opinion, whether it be Danny's opinion, whether it be any expert's opinion. So it's always going to be almost lessened down, and anytime you try to, in my opinion, interpret it or put these codes someplace where they have to be empirically studied, it opens itself to the human error, opens itself to interpretation and meaning. Now, whether that be a positive interpretation or a negative interpretation, I just think there's so much room for error that once we try to either match these up or use some sort of universal Rosetta Stone to translate what these mean, again, that's always just going to be passed through some sort of subjective personal filter, which is going to be inherently biased. So I put that out there. Is it interesting to know what these symbols look like? Yes. What I'm more interested in is who or what type of entity or consciousness or system created this code. Is it human? Is it not human? Is it within the normal dimensions of how we live our life? If there is something above and beyond what our normal human senses can perceive, then who put it there? What put it there? Is there a reason why we have to be in some sort of elevated state to see it? Those are the more bigger picture questions than what is it actually saying. It's more if there's something greater than us that put it there, let's start with that and then try to figure out what that means for us, other than what the actual symbols are. That being said, I know it's an important part of the conversation and it's an important part of this future study, so definitely something I'm not brushing off. But again, I would put that in context that if the code itself or some sort of symbol structure is there, that in itself is the revelation. Again, what that code is, what it means, what that means for our that's going to be left for interpretation for everybody. Some of the questions and comments can be dismissed pretty quickly by somebody that either has no experience with psychedelics, with DMT, with doing this experience, with doing this experiment, and they're just trying to to add some bullshit comments. Some people, I've gotten a comment that you're just seeing your eyelashes, or you're just seeing the nerves in your eyes, you're just seeing the cells of your eyes, that the manufacturer of the laser may have encoded some sort of watermark, and that's what you're seeing. It's, to me, that doesn't, I don't know what we're seeing or what I'm experiencing or what I've experienced, but to say that it just can be brushed off as just another type of normal experience. That's the point. Is it's not normal to DMT. It's not normal to laser. And I've also had some people that are pretty well versed in DMT, come out with kind of that the opinion of, well, this is just your brain producing these visualizations. You're just hallucinating, and it's just one of many visual aspects of going into the DMT space. Again, I appreciate everybody's input, and I try to be open-minded, because the last thing I'm going to say is that I know exactly what's going on. My answer to those types of comments are just that I'm so familiar with seeing what's in the DMT space. I'm so familiar with the chaotic movement and the spinning mandalas and the amplification and extra sensitivity of my senses. I'm so used to seeing all of this weird stuff that goes in and around the DMT space and dimensions. After looking at the laser at length, not on DMT, and just kind of looking at the surface of it, there's all of this normal chaotic movement and spinning motion that's inherently normal to any laser. And anybody that's familiar with lasers will tell you that that's, your movement is part of it. That's also not what you're seeing. There really truly is this kind of magic eye aspect where the code does come out, and there are moving symbols within a gridwork that are uniform in size, that adhere to some sort of structure and rules that nothing else in the DMT space, and I would add this to it. If the same thing is being produced in my mind, so if it is just me hallucinating, and if it is just my visual creativity going crazy, and I really just want to see the code, that's why I'm seeing the code. The fact that my brain has never done anything remotely close to that in the DMT space, when I've tried to do all these other explorations, the fact that something external seems to be there, and I guess maybe that's one of the key points too, is there's a lot of subjective, personal experiences that truly are unique to the individual when it comes to psychedelics. There are some things that happen only to you, and happen to do with your karma or history or whatever it may be. The code seems to be external to that. It doesn't seem to be unique to any one individual. It seems to be outside of our consciousness, outside of the DMT space, and to me, that's where the uniqueness and the interest of this code comes in, which is what the fuck is it that it supersedes psychedelic consciousness? It supersedes DMT space, and somehow it imparts its own set of physics and laws where the symbols just pop out. So, I'm going to continue to explore DMT in many fronts. My personal focus is more on mental health, on exploration of what our human potential is, what it means to unlock our 5 human senses, and then add on many more that are available. But part of my story is to just share my experiences in an honest and authentic way. So hopefully, once again, my only intent is to add data points. All I can do is share what I've seen. I don't try to act like I know what it means, what it says, what's there, but hopefully this will help my contribution to what this experiment is trying to shine light on, which is what the fuck is going on in this world. Again, I don't know, but I'll continue to explore. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions about the laser experiment, again, I would say check out Danny's work first. He probably has that answered. If you want any of my particular inputs about my experiences, my email is booksbyadambutler@gmail.com. Also, if anybody's interested in a PDF copy of my book, I'd be more than happy to send that out through email as well. So feel free to reach out. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.